The phone hadn't rung in 3 days. At first, Martha didn't notice. She was used to the quiet. At 76, life had slowed into a rhythm of tea at dawn, birdwatching from her porch, and long afternoons reading old letters. But by the 4th day, she glanced at her phone and felt something strange, a flicker of unease. Where was everyone? She used to have lunches on Tuesdays, church on Sundays, phone calls from her friend Lillian on Friday evenings. But then Lillian had passed, and the lunch group drifted apart after Diane moved away. And Martha stopped going to church when her knees got too bad. One by one, the familiar pieces fell away, until all that was left was the empty chair at her kitchen table. She stared at it longer than usual that morning. Had she done something wrong? Was she lonely, or was she finally free? If you're over 70, you've probably felt this shift too. The world gets quieter. Friendships fade. Invitations stop arriving. At first, it feels like loss, but slowly, something else begins to surface. Relief. A strange, unfamiliar sense of peace. And it raises a difficult but powerful question. What if you don't need more friends at this stage of life? What if letting go of certain relationships is exactly what your soul has been asking for? In this story, we'll explore that question, gently, honestly, and without guilt. This isn't a message about isolation. It's about evolution. About how your priorities change after 70. How health, grief, and perspective shape the way you connect with others. How it becomes harder to relate across generations, and how, eventually, you might find more joy in your own quiet company than in trying to maintain a circle that no longer fits. You'll meet people like Martha, who found comfort in solitude, like Harold, who stopped chasing one-sided friendships, like Eleanor, who discovered joy in spending time alone, like Richard, who realized that time is too precious to spend out of habit. Through their stories, you'll discover 5 powerful truths that many older adults come to learn. Priorities shift. You begin to value health, family, and peace more than small talk and socializing. Loss and loneliness happen, but they can also lead to deep inner healing. Physical limitations change how we engage, and that's okay. Generational gaps can make connection harder, but not impossible. Satisfaction with your own life may be the greatest friendship of all. Each chapter will invite you not to withdraw, but to choose deliberately. To stop feeling guilty for saying no. To embrace silence as a companion. To redefine what connection means, not as quantity, but as quality. Because maybe, just maybe, the shrinking of your social circle isn't a tragedy. Maybe it's a natural, beautiful unfolding. A return to the self. A simplification of what matters. A clearing of the noise, so that you can hear your own heartbeat again. So stay with me. We're going to talk about what no one talks about. Not how to make more friends, but how to find peace, even joy, with fewer. And why in the quiet of your later years, you might finally meet the most important person of all, yourself. Chapter 1. When priorities change. There was a time when Joan's calendar was full. Coffee with the neighbors on Monday, bingo night on Wednesday, church choir every Friday evening. Her phone rang often, the mailbox held invitations, and the weekends were spoken for. But that time has passed. Now, at 75, Joan's days begin slowly. She starts with tea, looks after her garden, writes in her journal, and sometimes, only sometimes, meets someone for lunch. But mostly, she enjoys being home, alone, unhurried. And the strangest part? She doesn't miss the busyness, not one bit. Many people assume that aging is a lonely season, but they're missing something important. It's also a season of clarity. After decades of juggling work, relationships, and social expectations, something shifts. What once seemed essential, networking, keeping up appearances, being seen, begins to lose its meaning. What rises instead is a new priority: peace. You begin to realize that you don't have to fill every space with someone else, that your energy is limited, and that spending it wisely is an act of self-respect. Joan used to feel guilty when she turned down an invitation. What if they think I'm being rude, she'd wonder. But over time, the guilt faded, and in its place came a new question. Does this gathering bring me joy or just obligation? The answer, more often than not, was clear. She wasn't angry at her old friends. She didn't resent the invitations. She just didn't need them anymore, not in the same way. Her priorities had changed. Now health came first, sleep, her evening walk, her grandkids' phone calls, her favorite book, and the soft light of her living room lamp. This shift is more common than you think. In your younger years, social connection often means survival. A job depends on who you know. Your kids' schedules demand community. Your identity feels shaped by your social circle. But after 70, you realize something. You've already proven yourself. You've done your part, you've built your life. You don't need to chase anything anymore. And suddenly, the effort to maintain large networks feels exhausting. So you let go, gently, and you discover something that surprises you. Quiet can feel like freedom. This doesn't mean relationships stop mattering. It means the way they matter evolves. You start choosing quality over quantity, silence over small talk, solitude over social performance. You no longer go out just to be seen. You stay in because your body asks for rest. You don't attend every lunch. You choose the ones that nourish your heart. You don't talk for the sake of filling air. You speak when the words are kind and needed. This is not giving up. This is growing into yourself. Joan now smiles when she sees her old calendar tucked away in a drawer. It's not sadness she feels, but gratitude. Gratitude that she once lived fully. Gratitude that she now lives differently, but no less richly. And above all, she's thankful that her priorities changed, because without that shift, she might still be chasing what she no longer needs. Gentle reminders. It's okay to cancel plans. It's okay to say no to noise. It's okay to crave stillness. It's okay to stop explaining why you need more space. You don't have to justify your peace. You've earned it. Chapter 2. When loss leaves you quiet. It happened in late autumn. The leaves were turning, the mornings colder. Eleanor had just turned 78 when her husband Martin passed away in his sleep. Quietly, unexpectedly. They had been married for 52 years. For the first few days, her house was full. Neighbors bringing food, children calling, friends stopping by. But as time went on, the voices faded. The chairs sat empty. The hallway echoed with silence. And Eleanor was left alone, with his book still on the shelf, his coffee mug still by the sink, and 1,000 conversations that would never be had again. Loss changes everything. Not just the big things like your routines or your address book, but the small, almost invisible ones. The way you sit at the table. The sound of your breathing in a room that used to be shared. The moment you reach for a hand that's no longer there. And then comes the question no one can answer for you. How do you live in the quiet that follows? Many people over 70 carry these kinds of losses, quietly, bravely. Spouses, siblings, lifelong friends, the ones you thought would always be around. One day they're here, the next, only in memory. It's not just absence, it's reorientation. Learning how to exist in a world that feels less familiar, more fragile. And with that loss often comes something just as heavy, loneliness. Not because you're unloved, but because the ones who truly knew you, your stories, your habits, your heart, are no longer sitting across from you. Eleanor found that the loneliest part of grief wasn't the evenings, it was the mornings. Waking up without anyone to say good morning, making tea for one, the silence that followed her footsteps down the hall. She tried joining a support group. She called her children more often. She even considered adopting a dog. But nothing filled the space quite the same. Until, one morning, she did something small. She wrote him a letter. She sat at the kitchen table, pulled out a piece of paper and told Martin everything she would have said if he were still here. About the morning fog, about the way the maple tree had turned orange overnight, about how she missed hearing him hum while shaving. She cried as she wrote. But something unexpected happened too. She smiled, because in those words she realized something important. He was still part of her story. And more than that, she was still writing her own. Loneliness is not a failure. It's a reflection of how deeply you've loved. But it doesn't mean you're finished. After loss, your world becomes smaller, not out of choice, but by nature. The circle tightens, the noise quiets, and in that stillness, you meet a different version of yourself. Older, yes, but also wiser, softer, more inwardly strong. You start asking different questions. What do I need now? What parts of life still bring me joy? How can I honor the past while gently stepping forward? Eleanor began to find comfort in small routines. A walk every morning with no destination, lighting a candle before dinner, listening to music they both loved, not with sadness, but with gratitude. And most importantly, she stopped forcing herself to move on. Instead, she moved with her grief, carrying it like a quiet companion. Some days it weighed heavy, other days it whispered gently. But through it all, she found herself again, not the woman she was with Martin, but the woman she was becoming now. Gentle reminders. It's okay to feel lonely, even surrounded by people. It's okay to miss someone forever and still smile again. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering with less pain and more peace. You don't have to rush. Grief follows no clock. Let the quiet teach you. Let the loss shape you, but never define you. And above all, remember, if you've lost someone dear, it only means you love deeply, and that love will carry you forward, even when you're walking alone. Chapter 3. When the body slows. It started with her knees. One day, Margaret noticed that climbing stairs took longer. Then came the stiffness in her hands, the slower steps, the quiet ache in her back that never quite left. She was 79 and the changes weren't sudden, but they were steady. She began turning down invitations. The book club met on the second floor of the library. Her garden group required standing for hours. Even lunch dates felt tiring when they involved busy cafes or walking through parking lots. "I'm just not up for it today," she would say. But deep down, she felt something else, a growing distance between her and the world she used to know. This is a truth many seniors face, but few talk about. When your body slows, your social life often slows with it. Suddenly, outings feel like obstacles. Travel becomes stressful. You begin to say no, not because you don't care, but because your body is asking for something different. Rest, simplicity, and safety. But others may not understand. Some friends stop calling, some invitations stop coming, and slowly you begin to feel like you're fading from the picture. Still present, but no longer included. Margaret once tried to explain it to her friend, Claire. "It's not that I don't want to come," she said gently. "It's just harder now." Claire nodded but changed the subject. The next event came and went without her. Margaret didn't blame her, but she felt the ache, not just in her knees, but in her heart. That's the quiet grief of aging, watching your world become less reachable, one step at a time. But over time, Margaret realized something else. Maybe she didn't need to fight against her body, maybe she needed to listen to it. So she stopped forcing herself to go where she couldn't comfortably go. Instead, she invited the world to come to her. She hosted tea in her backyard, one guest at a time. She joined an online book club for seniors. She discovered chair yoga and did it by the window every morning. She learned to write letters again, real ones on paper, with a pen. And the surprising part? She didn't feel disconnected. In fact, she felt more present, more grounded, more in tune with her own rhythm. Aging isn't a problem to fix. It's a journey to adapt to. Your body may not move the way it used to. That doesn't mean you stop living. It means you're living differently, more gently, more mindfully. If you feel left out, remember, you haven't changed in value, only in capacity. And capacity can be honored in new ways. Gentle reminders. It's okay to say no to things that feel physically demanding. Real friends will understand and even adjust. There's no shame in choosing comfort over effort. Connection isn't about how far you go. It's about how present you are. Let your body lead. Let your life shift. You're not falling behind. You're just walking at a pace that honors who you are now. Chapter 4. When conversations change. Why do they always have their faces in their phones? Thomas chuckled as he watched his grandchildren at the dinner table, heads down, thumbs tapping, conversation non-existent. He didn't say it out loud, but he missed the days when dinner meant stories, laughter, and real eye contact. He still remembered when a good conversation could last hours. A walk to the store often turned into an unexpected visit with a neighbor. Strangers on the bus would share their life stories. There was time, there was warmth. Now the world felt faster, louder, shallower. Even when surrounded by people, Thomas sometimes felt like a visitor in his own life. This is something many older adults feel, but don't always know how to express. It's not that you don't care about younger generations. It's not that you don't want to connect. It's just that so much has changed, the way people speak, think, live, and prioritize. And those differences can build invisible walls between us. Thomas used to meet with an old friend's daughter every Sunday at the park. She was in her 40s, kind, successful, talkative, but over time, he found the conversations harder to follow. Cryptocurrency, online startups, parenting styles, mental health trends, none of it felt familiar. He'd nod, smile, and offer a few words, but he always left those meetings more tired than fulfilled. One day, he realized something simple but profound. Connection requires more than shared time. It needs shared understanding. It's not just technology that creates distance. It's the way the world works now. People move faster, talk faster, think differently. The values are different, the pace relentless. You might find yourself confused by certain opinions or simply uninterested in things others seem to care deeply about. And when conversations start feeling like effort rather than joy, it's easy to wonder, is it me? Am I falling behind? The truth? No, you're not behind. You're just standing on a different part of the path, one they haven't reached yet. Thomas stopped forcing those Sunday visits, not out of resentment, but out of kindness for himself and for her. Instead, he reached out to George, an old neighbor from church. They didn't talk often, but when they did, the conversations flowed. Slow, familiar, meaningful. They spoke about old music, their childhood towns, their wives. They laughed, they paused, and in the silence between words, there was comfort. It reminded Thomas that connection didn't have to be exciting. Sometimes it just had to be real. This doesn't mean we can't connect across generations. We can, and we should. But it helps to recognize that not every relationship needs to be close, and not every conversation needs to be pursued. Some people pass through our lives for seasons. Some stay, some drift, and some are simply not meant to understand us, not fully. That's okay. Because there are others, fewer, maybe, but deeper. The ones who truly see you, or perhaps more importantly, the ones who let you be. Gentle reminders. You don't have to keep up with every trend or topic. You're allowed to crave slower, richer conversation. It's okay to feel distant from people you once felt close to. The right people won't require you to change who you are to stay connected. And when the conversation no longer flows, you can choose silence, or new company, or even your own. Thomas still smiles when he sees his grandchildren on their phones. He knows he doesn't speak their language. But he's also learned that his own voice still matters, even if it's quieter now. Chapter 5, When Less Becomes Enough. Frank never planned to live a quiet life. In his youth, he was the kind of man who filled every room. Loud laughter, big stories, always the first to host, the last to leave. His house was once the heart of every holiday, filled with friends, neighbors, and voices echoing into the night. But now, at 82, the house was quieter. The phone rang less. His gatherings had stopped. The holiday cards on the mantle came from fewer people each year. And for a time, Frank feared something was wrong. Was he fading? Was he forgotten? But one morning, sitting on his porch, with coffee in hand, watching the breeze move through the trees, he felt something new, something unexpected. Peace. It wasn't loneliness. It was clarity. Frank began to realize that the joy he once found in big circles, he now found in small things. a conversation with his daughter, a homemade soup recipe perfected over time, the comfort of watching the same old movie for the 20th time. The stillness that followed a long day, not filled with noise, but with meaning. And slowly, that old ache, the one that whispered you should be doing more, began to fade. After 70, many people discover this quiet transformation. You no longer crave more. You begin to feel that less is enough. Fewer people, fewer plans, fewer complications. Not because you're giving up on life, but because you've finally started living on your terms. You know what matters and what doesn't. You've made peace with your past. And now, you're not chasing anything. You're simply being. Frank still gets invited to the occasional gathering. Sometimes he goes, sometimes he doesn't. But he never says yes out of guilt, only out of joy. And when he's alone, he doesn't feel lacking, because his life is full, just not in the way others expect. Gentle reminders. You don't need a crowd to feel alive. You don't need to explain your peace to anyone. You don't need to chase relationships to prove your worth. A quiet life can be a rich one, if it's filled with presence and purpose. You are not less just because your circle is smaller. You are not forgotten just because your days are quieter. You are not alone just because your phone doesn't ring as much. You are here, you are wise, and most of all, you are enough. Final thoughts. Thank you for walking with us. Tilty 502. If you've made it to this point, thank you. Thank you for reading, reflecting, and most importantly, being open to change. Letting go of relationships is not easy. It brings questions, fears, sometimes guilt, but also freedom and peace, and the kind of fulfillment that doesn't depend on anyone else's expectations. In this story, we've walked through 5 truths many older adults come to face. That priorities shift, and that's not selfish, it's wise. That loss and loneliness are real, but they can teach us who we really are. That health and mobility change how we connect. And that's not a failure. That generational gaps may widen, but they don't close your heart. And that sometimes, when the crowd thins, you begin to realize you've already arrived. You don't need to add more to your life to make it meaningful. You just need to see the meaning that's already there. So, wherever you are, however quiet your days may feel, remember this. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not too late. You are exactly where you're meant to be. Living slowly, living wisely, living fully. And we're honored to have shared this path with you. Thank you for being here, for choosing peace, for choosing yourself. We hope this story gave you comfort, clarity, and a quiet kind of courage. Until next time, stay kind to yourself. You've earned it.